Welcome back to the Film Element Podcast, your podcast for film news, reviews, and interviews. I'm your host, Mike Gallant, and I'm not sure exactly what number I'm going to make this podcast. I've done a couple since my first one, which I call the pilot, and this one is a little more timely, and it's very news related. And I'm doing this because I feel like we've been hit with, I would argue this is the atom bomb for the film industry. I don't see a lot of people talking about it yet, but I feel that the momentum for it is going to pick up over the next couple of days. And what I'm talking about is the Chinese AI platform called Seedance. Now, if you're not familiar with AI video in general, I think most of us are, especially if you're involved in the film industry. There's a lot of stuff that's being made out there to varying degrees of success. Mostly we haven't seen anything break through where we go, you know what, this is why AI exists. This is fantastic. This is exactly what we need it for. What we're generally seeing is a couple of entertaining clips of cool ideas that are coming together, but nothing that would really, I think, is a true disruptor. Mainly because there seems to be an uncanny valley between what we're seeing and what we're believing. And what I mean by that is we're watching an AI video that can look real, but there's always something about it that just doesn't quite get there. And that's what CGI has contended with over the last 30 years that it's existed, 30, 35 years. There's actually very few films, a lot of us could agree, completely make us believe that something is real that is not. There's always something that sort of lets the air out and brings us back to us saying, okay, this is just a movie. That person isn't really there, or, that car can't really do that. If you look at great films like the John Wick series, right? A lot of those stunts are insane and fantastic, and so much of it is done in camera. But then you watch the behind the scenes, and there's a lot of stuff that is faked, and you go, yeah, of course, he can't get hit by 4 cars at once, in the middle of Paris. Like, there's all of these things that just, you go, yeah, that's not going to happen, or yeah, they're not really there. There are certainly moments where you can be tricked, but I think generally most audiences, and maybe I'm giving people too much credit, maybe I'm just more skeptical and cynical when I watch these films or TV shows, and I feel I can see, where the live action ends and the CGI begins, and that's fine. I think most of us have made this bargain with filmmakers and film and the film industry in general that, listen, we can accept a certain level of CGI, VFX, whatever. Just please entertain us. It doesn't have to look real, but can you make it look as close to real as possible? And we'll buy in, right? I say all that because today I saw clips from Seedance that made me realize that the old world is over, right? I'm Canadian. My Prime Minister, Mark Carney, went up and spoke in front of the United Nations. I think it's been a month or at least a few weeks. And he said, the old world is over. There is a rupture that's happened, and we're not going back to the way things were. And I feel that way about Seedance. Now, there's been a lot of AI video platforms that have sprung up over the past couple of years. I think Sora was sort of the biggest disruptor initially, where we watched that and we go, oh, okay, they can actually get this a lot closer to real life than we expected. It's not just pure AI slop, with people that have 6 fingers that are meant to have 4, and you can see the blending and the pixels not fully coming together because they're not fully understanding what they're making. They're just sort of guessing. And we all knew that there was going to be, progression. We knew that there was going to be evolution with the AI videos. And before that had happened, I would say before today or yesterday when these clips started dropping from Seedance, I think a lot of people were very nervous and skeptical, especially in the film industry, that there was a way that these could overtake films as we know it. But overall, until very recently, I would argue that evidence hadn't presented itself. We'd seen a couple of cool clips, but nothing where you go, I'm going to go to a movie theater and shell out money for that. Or I want Netflix to have a whole show of this. And 8 episodes, an hour long, I'm going to sit there and binge. That's just not... other people might have felt differently, but I didn't see anything that was more than just a quick, oh, that's cool, and then you move on. The most recent thing I would say that I found kind of fun and interesting to watch was there's a creator on YouTube that did these Star Wars stories, and they used AI, to recreate your favorite characters: Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Leia, Han Solo, all these different well-known characters. Almost none of it looked convincing. You didn't watch that and go, oh my God, I'm watching a movie. You would watch it and it was almost like an animatic of these characters playing out this dialogue that I guess was written in some of the lesser known books or some of the more well-known books, depending on how big of a fan you are. And, and it was set to music. So you could feel the emotion and you could sort of buy into the story. But there was definitely a wall between, the level of enjoyment you could get, because it was very obvious, very, very obvious that the actors weren't there and it was AI, and AI was trying its best to make it look great. And some of them are older than others. Like, some have come out very recently that are a lot more convincing than some of the ones that came out 9 months ago. And so this is a big trend that's on YouTube right now, and other people have done similar stuff. There's a funny clip right now of the classic Ninja Turtles in a WWE ring. And, and that stuff looks great because it actually looks pretty convincing, and they're using SD looking footage with the old VHS tracking bars at the bottom, so it looks like you recorded it off your old television, your old tube television off cable. And so that, again, that's fun to watch and look at, but does it go beyond that for me? No. But are there people out there that probably want to see a whole series of it and play it out from beginning to end? Sure. I still want to believe that most people want to watch this stuff as an art form created by people with people, to give a good example with the Ninja Turtles, right? It's that I recently showed the original 1991 to my daughter, who's 4 years old, and I think she was relatively the same age that I was when I first saw it. And it's a little dark and adult themed, obviously, a little violent, but it captures the imagination. And seeing them with those helmets on and the Jim Henson motorized mouths and eyes, those things are really in the room with those people. And there's a craftsmanship and a real appreciation for a certain type of puppetry and art form there that, that film has stood the test of time. I think as it's aged, you can definitely see the seams of those costumes. When I watched it, it was on a little tiny square television on a VHS. I think I might have seen it in movie theaters. But I don't know. But yeah, that was the version I was used to seeing it. So you didn't see the seams and you could buy into the costumes a little bit more. Now we're seeing HD and 4K. So, it's a little more exposing on the sort of the limitations of those costumes. But that's also part of the charm, right? We still buy into it, even though we can tell that they're suits and they're helmets and costumes. There's just something about that fantasy that we want to buy into it. And then you flash forward to, 2013 and 15 with the CGI turtles, and it feels that those are completely limitless, and the camera is doing all these impossible movements around them, and the turtles are moving in impossible ways, and the physics goes further and further out the window for for spectacle, right? Those two movies, the spectacle factor is through the roof, especially compared to that original trilogy, even with the third one being set in, feudal Japan. But I believe because of that, there's more of a soullessness to it. And it's harder to buy into and enjoy the characters because we see that they're not really in the room. We can tell that the actor is probably talking to a tennis ball or an actor in pajamas. And, the Marvel movies have had to put a lot of work into overcoming that with audiences, because all of their films are based on... We're never going to see a real Hulk suit, right? Mark Ruffalo is never going to put on a giant Hulk suit and then that's what we're going to buy on screen. It's not going to happen. And we're probably never going to see a Thing as a real suit again, even though we got a decently convincing one in the early 2000s. But now he's always going to be CG, and I'm sure there's no negotiating about that, which you can argue is a plus or a minus. Oh, when I'm talking The Thing, I mean the Fantastic Four, for those of you who don't know. So why am I talking about this? It's because Seedance, I now believe, and you can check out a lot of these clips online, they've released a few dozen clips, and in my opinion, they've now crossed that uncanny valley that I was talking about, and they are basically convincing. The only reason you don't buy it truly is that it's not real. But I'll give an example. There's a scene where Brad Pitt is fist fighting Tom Cruise, and I think there's something about the Epstein list, and I think Brad Pitt has all these cuts on his face, and they're on some dystopian rooftop somewhere, and he's telling Tom Cruise, why did you get rid of the Epstein list, or were you on something along that line? And I think this actually goes further into my point. And they're having a fist fight, and Tom Cruise is fighting back, and they're going back and forth. Now, obviously, both of these guys, I think, are in their 60s now. Obviously, they both look great for their age, and they still have some great physical capabilities that most of us are not going to achieve in our 60s. So they're fighting believably. That's something we don't talk about, is that Seedance is recreating people that we know and are familiar with and recreating them perfectly. Brad Pitt doesn't move like he's Mark Ruffalo, and Tom Cruise doesn't move like he's Beyonce. He moves like he's Tom Cruise. It's Tom Cruise's fighting style. I would argue that Brad Pitt fighting doesn't quite look exactly like what we saw maybe in Bullet Train or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but it's damn sure close enough. And I think watching that stuff, I don't want to sound alarmist. A lot of people have been alarmist about AI, and I would say probably rightfully so. But I don't know what this can mean, because if they can do this and it can be convincing, and now, if we don't safeguard against this, and obviously I'm just part of one industry, the film industry, but stuff like this is happening in every industry on the planet, right? why do you need lawyers if you have an AI that knows the law and can write a contract in seconds and go through the contract and point out the stuff you need to worry about or you don't need to worry about? And you will say, no, you need the human mind to understand the nuances. And I would argue we are getting to the point where they know the nuances now. And I use the Seedance, these clips specifically, as evidence that they are getting there. And they might actually be there. And I think that's the scariest part of all, is that the human part of this is blending in. For a while, we could sit comfortably knowing that they couldn't recreate the human mind or the human experiences. There's a missing link between AI and humans. And I would argue we're blending that line now. And when you see, there's other clips, there's like a lot of it is really fun stuff where it's cartoon characters that have become real life, and it looks convincing. It looks exactly like what they would look like in real life. There's one clip, it's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man fighting Chris Evans' Captain America in the middle of New York, and you can tell it's a Sam Raimi movie, right? It has the aesthetic of those early Spider-Man movies. And again, the movement is pretty much perfect, especially on the Captain America side. So, and Chris Evans, this CGI AI version of him, is emoting and reacting. And Seedance is arguing that these prompts that they have are not that elaborate. You often think, okay, if you want to get something really specific and really good, you got to really know how to write the prompts and trial and error until eventually you get to it. And Seedance is arguing that, no, these prompts are more intuitive than anything you've had before. So you don't need to be like a Harvard scholar in prompt writing. You can we know what you're probably trying to go for, and we're going to give it to you. Obviously, they're presenting all of their best clips, so there might be a lot of bad versions of what they were trying to do out there that are on some editing floor somewhere, not being utilized. But regardless, if we take these clips and we take Seedance at their word, then in my opinion, we have probably the biggest disruptor in the film industry. I mean, Sora was sort of the beginning, and I think we've now reached the beginning of the end. If I don't want to be too cynical, and again, I don't want to be too alarmist, but I think we have to sort of take a step back and reflect on if we can create a movie, and not just a movie, if we can create something with AI and it's not slop anymore, it's actually a compelling piece of cinema. Again, Seedance isn't just giving you one clip and that's it, right? They're giving you a scene with angles, and they're changing the angles. Now, what I always thought sucked about AI and sort of kept them underground, the AI videos, is that you can't really cut a scene together because the character would change slightly in the next angle, right? Like the AI wouldn't keep up with what they were supposed to do. So, those vintage Batman videos or something, they'd show Batman, a cool 1950s version, like a film scope version of him. And then they show another clip and he's like slightly redesigned again. And the next clip he's slightly redesigned again. So you go, okay, this is just funny. Like AI is just throwing shit at the wall. Now we're not doing that. Now it's smart enough to make the characters consistent, not add in bullcrap that gives it away. It's becoming convincing. And there's a couple of dystopian things about this that we should be thinking about. One is, if you're able to type out a movie with prompts and then create it, we have to ask ourselves, what is even a movie now, right? Like, how and why could we justify spending? Think about what movies are costing now. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of dollars. The avatars are in the billions now, right? Granted, they make billions, which helps, but if you can synthesize all of that down and make stuff that is completely convincing, then what do we do? And you would say, well, people still go to the movie theaters. Like, don't let the headlines fool you. People are still going to the movies and seeing films. I don't believe there's the same the diversity at movie theaters that there used to be. So we're seeing a lot of the same type of things, blockbusters, that were made from other IPs with already known fan bases. So that's sort of all of the theatrical venues, bread and butter. And then they'll throw in an indie here, they'll throw in a little rom-com here that they know won't make any money, but at least people are coming in to buy some popcorn and drinks. And, who knows, at least it's a couple butts in seats and they can feel good about themselves, that they're not just, putting out blockbuster after blockbuster that, no one will care about in a couple of years. So if we switch to this different world where anyone can make a film just as good, if not better, than what Hollywood produces, what do we do? And I don't think there's any clear answer for that at all. And that's okay. No, have I been out of focus this whole time? Whatever, maybe I was in focus, maybe I wasn't. Oh well, what are you gonna do? I think I'm okay. Whatever. So what do we do? And I'm just some guy on a podcast. Like, what answer am I going to have for this? What I would recommend is that I think we do need to be alarmist about this, because obviously it's going to destroy the industry as a whole. There will obviously be, niche needs for authentic filmmaking. I think that will still exist on some level, but it will not look like what we know and understand it these days. And I think it's interesting because I'm curious what that does to people's salaries. And obviously people below the line, but we also have to think of stars above the line. Like, how useful if you're Disney and you say Robert Downey Jr. wants $50 million to do the next Avengers, but you go, well, we already have your likeness, so we can go and just do a movie with you without you. And a lot of actors sign off their likenesses because in the event, they get injured or die while filming, or at least in post-production, that production is able to finish the film with a CGI, nowadays probably an AI version of that character, just to get them through the missing scenes so that they can deliver the film, right? A very famous case is what happened with Heath Ledger when he died during, I'm not even going to attempt to say the name of the film, Dr. Parnassus and the Imaginarium. He died while filming that film, so they had to finish it, and they used what they could of him, but then brought in other actors like Colin Farrell, and I think Johnny Depp was another one and I think there's someone else, Jude Law maybe, and they filled in those gaps. Unfortunately, the film sort of lent its craziness to that concept actually working. But regardless, when you give away your likeness and now they can finish or make a film with you with AI, how valuable are you anymore? Now, you could argue that people want the unpredictability, right? It's why we go to concerts still. It's why we go to stand-up comedy live shows. We still do a lot of stuff live, you know. Yeah. But I believe, sorry, I was just trying to, Taylor Swift. That's who I was trying to think of. Because I was like, what's the biggest live act on earth right now is Taylor Swift, right? Taylor Swift made hundreds of millions of dollars touring, broke records. And that only happened a year or two ago. And if she went on tour tomorrow again, same exact thing would happen. So people want live events. People want to see things live. They still want the communal experience, despite what all the naysayers say. It's still a big part of our society. So that said, I think AI, we are safe from AI just on that alone. I think people still crave authenticity and performance. But I think when you see something like Seedance, we have to sound the alarm. And we have to sound the alarm in a couple of ways, because now that we can't tell what is AI, whereas before we felt that we could, we have to have safeguards to protect ourselves from it. And how do we do that? I don't even know. Because if you make something that's convincing, you're taking someone at their word that they didn't actually do that, right? So like if they released that clip of Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, I know it's not real because it's so far removed from anything we understand that they're up to right now. But if I lived under a rock and I didn't know what their careers were up to, and I saw that and I'm like, why is Brad Pitt yelling at Tom Cruise about Epstein, right? We would have to take Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt at their word when they come out and do an interview saying that wasn't really me. And I mean, we can think about that with the film industry, but not to get too political, that has pretty dire ramifications for political leaders and just generally people as a whole. When you can do something and make it look like someone did something and there's no real way to prove that they didn't other than he said, she said, what happens to us as a whole, right? Like let's think of the justice system. Now, probably a lot of lower tier criminals are not going to have access or be savvy enough to AI themselves into innocence. But there are damn sure a lot of high profile criminals out there that could absolutely manipulate ring camera footage, dash cam footage, anything they want to make them look like they didn't do something that they did. And if they don't do that themselves, they have teams and other people to make that happen. I know I'm going into sort of a conspiracy world right here, but I think because of the penchant for misinformation to be exploited through something like this. Like I said, there's AI that was convincing and could probably convince a lot of people that something that wasn't real was. There's a lot of funny ring cam videos of dogs knocking on a door and then shooting fire out of their mouth, or cats blowing up a house on a ring cam like they're a grenade, and it looks real, but it's clearly not real because the joke is, I know this is not real because cats can't do that. So fortunately there's that block, but now we're in this world where that block no longer exists, and they can just do whatever they need to do to make you convinced of what you need to be convinced of. Like, I think back, so much technology and so much effort went into scanning actors, right? Like most actors on a big production get their face and their body scanned again. So if something happens to them, they can use that technology to sort of CGI them into the rest of the film so they can finish it and release it. You know, it's written into every celebrity's contract that goes on to a film. I'm not really allowed to talk about this, but I don't care. There's a Boys spin-off about Soldier Boy that takes place in the 1940s, and I was actually on set. I was a background actor, so I was in like 1940s garb. I think it was one of the first days that they were shooting, and they told us we needed to be scanned. And I asked several times, I asked several ADs, I was like, what is this scanning for? And they said they just wanted us because they wanted to be able to recreate us in crowds and move us around. And obviously there was no extra compensation for that. And there was a really bizarre way that they approached it because they made it seem like it was voluntary, and then quite often then there were several moments throughout the day where they made it seem like it was very much mandatory. I just don't believe in that. And I'm not going to scan my face and my body and give it to Amazon. There's enough stuff out there that has enough information on me. Amazon doesn't need my face or body, especially for no compensation. I'm probably not allowed to talk about that, but it's to me, I found that practice extremely offensive and not something I wanted to participate in. And I don't care if it puts me on blast or, puts them on blast. But people should be aware that this stuff is happening, and it's happening with big corporations, right? Because they don't need to scan audience members to put us in. That's such bullshit. They could figure it out with the budgets and resources that they have. Either just pay us again to put us over there, or CGI people in. I don't know what the body scanning was for. Maybe it was exactly for that purpose, but even still, I still find it unacceptable. There are practices where you do plates of a crowd, right? So you have a wide shot, then you place part of the crowd here, get a plate of that, shoot that for a couple seconds. Then the audience gets up. Usually they try and change their clothes a little bit, change up the seating, and then sit over here, shoot it again, get that section of the plate, and then maybe one more time over here, right? And that's pretty standard practice, and I think most people can get on board with that process, even though, they're not paying for all the extras to fill up the entire scene. I think we can all agree that it's fine to repurpose us, in a plate. But I believe body scanning without compensation just is a weird practice, especially with the way that they presented and approached people about it. It went from voluntary to mandatory, and there was no real good answer why for either. So stuff like that already has my guard up. But let's go back to Seedance. Now, when we talk about Seedance, I think as filmmakers, we have to decide if we're going to fight against this or embrace it. Now, I'll admit, part of me is excited about Seedance because, I have a lot of big ideas that I want to bring to the screen, and I don't have nearly enough resources to make it happen. Maybe one day, but as the years go on, it feels like the opportunity to make that happen is diminishing. Something like Seedance comes along where I can just create whatever I want with some prompts on my keyboard. That's extremely enticing. I have a lot of stuff, especially from my childhood. I have a lot of scripts, that would cost $100 million to make. So many ideas, cartoons, franchise ideas, all of these different things. And to be able to create that on my own is extremely enticing. But I also understand that So Seedance is not in America or North America yet. It is still exclusively in China. I don't know if it's on a beta or if it's officially been released and good to go and people are using it in China. And I don't know how far that stretches. I don't know if it's just China, Asia, whatever. But it is not where I am in Canada yet. And I think we have to, like I said, this to me is a moment. We have to decide, are we going to let this happen or are we going to push back against it? Because there are arguments on both sides, right? You democratize the filmmaking experience. Let's be honest, filmmaking is expensive. It's always been expensive. And right now it feels like it costs more than it ever did. You know, the big switch from digital to film brought down costs in a lot of ways. But then other stuff started getting in the way, and stars and movie stars get paid a lot more money now than they used to. And they'll argue that they don't, but the reality is, yes, they get paid a lot more money now. Part of that is inflation, part of that is whatever. But that is the reality. So it's expensive to do stuff, especially with name talent. Now, if you're just some filmmaker in the middle of nowhere and you just have an idea and you want to see if some people will like it, and, you know, this is the creator economy now, I also see how they should be allowed to be at the table as well. But it would come at a great cost, and it would come at a great cost to thousands and thousands of workers and an industry as a whole. I would say there's probably millions of people in the film industry, and a lot of those people would go out of work overnight. And you go, so it's one industry. It's like, yes, but those people go into your industry and they go into, you know, all these other jobs that generally had an equilibrium are now being flooded with a lot of people that are out of work over here. And obviously that's how a depression is created, right? One sector dies, those people move into other spots, and then job vacancies disappear. And then, you know, we get what we get. So I think I'm going to wrap this up because I've been I've been rambling way longer than I thought. I would say I wanted to talk about Seedance because I want people to be aware of what's going on. And we've now in my opinion, today, as of today or yesterday, whenever this launched, we've officially reached the point where AI film can replace what we know as film and television. And that can be done with prompts, and they can give us a great sound mix, color correction, the cinematography we want, the actors, the storylines we want. It is there. And to act like the human experience is in some way special or superior to what AI can create now is, in my opinion, naive. They've crossed that threshold. They know how to do humanity. And I'm sure it's coming from an extremely artificial place, but it is what it is now. We have to contend with that. So, and again, maybe Seedance is hiding their content. Maybe they're overselling what they can actually do. I'm just going strictly on what I'm seeing from these clips that are coming out. But if we are to believe them at their word, I believe we are in a lot of trouble in the film industry, and we have to rethink what it means to make a film, to be a filmmaker, and are we going to accept this tool into our community and our country? Are we going to let that happen? Can we even fight against it? Even if we say no to this, is that just pissing into the wind because it's going to bulldozer through us anyway? I don't know. That's your decision to make. All I can say is we need to be talking about this, and we need to be addressing it in real ways that can come up with real solutions. We either, the whole thing about AI is either you embrace it or you get left behind. And at some point we have to say no, and we have to stop. And I was thinking about this analogy earlier of Jurassic Park when they say, you know, you're so busy asking, can we never stop to ask, should we? I might be paraphrasing. And you want to say that about AI, but then I thought, well, Jurassic Park's actually a bad example because after 7 films, the dinosaurs lived on Earth in that universe for 30 years. And then by the time Rebirth rolls around, now they're just chilling on one quiet little island and it's actually not that bad. So maybe that's what's going to happen with AI. It's going to feel like, you know, Jurassic Park had a couple of industrial accidents that frankly, we had worse stuff happen trying to get to the moon. We had more people die trying to get people to the moon than Jurassic Park opening its theme park. You know, just one T-Rex sort of terrorized a couple people and ate a lawyer. It's not that bad, to be honest. But yeah, once you get through those humps, hey, you got dinosaurs on your planet for about 30 years. Not too shabby. And then the rest just live near the equator where no one goes anyway. Spoiler if you haven't seen Jurassic World Rebirth. But maybe that's what will happen with AI. Maybe it will feel like we'll go through some major humps and bumps trying to figure it out, and then we'll just get used to it and it will equal out. I would love for that to ultimately be what happens, but I think considering the people that run the world right now and, you know, the lack of ethics that exist in all of these, especially these tech corporations, I think it's extremely naive to think that AI is just some benevolent force come to help us wherever it can and just a tool. I think it can be utilized for some great danger, and I think we have to be ready. And here's the thing, a lot of people have had these conversations over the past couple of years, and like me personally, I just sort of get bored about this conversation after a couple of minutes because it's like, yeah, we're all going to say the same thing. But I think Seedance specifically is one of those disruptors where you go, okay, the uncanny valley has been crossed. So what do we do? Now they can do anything and make it look real. So what do we do? How do we handle that? Do we let that happen? Or do we just put our stake down and say no and don't care what the rest of the world is doing? I don't know. But hopefully whatever decision we get to doesn't ruin too many people's lives. So yeah, I'm going to end it there. Just wanted to give you some food for thought. Thanks for checking out the podcast. I'm going to be doing this maybe weekly, semi-weekly. I don't know. I'm going to try and find a good time, but I'm releasing this earlier than I expected because I think I had to talk about this as soon as possible. But yeah, thanks for checking out checking out. What an amateur. Thanks for checking this out and hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you on the next episode.